today we are talking about Jaws and the birth of the blockbuster. All to depress Spencer Gilbert, who is here with us today.
It's not Jaws' fault.
Not Jaws' fault, but I think we're all going to have thoughts and feelings and various reflections on the birth of the blockbuster, generally speaking. Joe Starr is here. He's going to get us through the Star Wars bit.
I hope so.
Maybe. Danielle Radford is here, but I want to let you guys know that you need to stick around today, and I may be moving us pretty quickly for these first couple of segments because, ladies and gentlemen, we have a blow-up doll update for you from the bold and those beautifuls and the blow-ups and the things and the dust. And we got an update for you, but you're going to have to stay here to hear all about it at the end of the show. But first, how Jaws and Star Wars begat the Avengers. How Jaws and Star Wars begat the Avengers. Is that our title? Because it should be.
It really should be.
Like SEO magic right there.
Yeah, that's a great. I'll change it. Thank you.
I mean, that's it for me today.
Also, begat is just such a solid word that people don't use enough.
And then Jaws begats the Avengers.
And then Avengers begat the Fast and the Furious.
That begat the Dark Universe.
Yes.
Not untrue, any of it. So let us talk about this. This is the 45th anniversary of Jaws this weekend, so we wanted to look at the movie along with Star Wars and how Star Wars created the Hollywood blockbuster as we know it. So, quick recap, history lesson for us all. Before these movies, thank you, Danielle. Before these movies, the studios didn't see summer as an especially lucrative time. Ha ha ha! Now it's just going to be any time outside of flu season,
which is all the time now. Anyway,
flu season is pretty much every day. So IndieWire, this is via IndieWire about Jaws. It was made for less than $9 million, and then went on to gross $450 million in global returns, including $260 million in a domestic take. That's with 1975. So this is the first film to break $235 million in domestic returns. And now all these, oh my God, it's almost 50 years later. Oh my God. Anyway, it's still in the all-time top 100 and adjusted for inflation, it sits as number 7 in terms of how much money it made. So it paved the way for the tentpole as we know it, also sequels as we now know it. Back then, it was not a given that a movie would get 3 movies with diminishing returns, each and every one, which we'll talk about today. Though Spencer made a really great argument for Jaws the Revenge ones that I like to think is true. So with all that in mind, I promise
you I've forgotten what I said. I forgot what I said 10 seconds ago, much less on another video.
Me too. We're going to discuss this, and then we're going to go into a separate section where we're going to talk about how it also altered the way movies are marketed, which is a huge deal today. And over time, the marketing departments and studios have gained more and more power. They sometimes have sway over things like casting and so forth. So it is a sea change, which Joe, I believe, put in the script for us to dive into. Let's start talk about how Jaws changed the summer blockbuster, what we think about that. Do we think it was inevitable? And then I'll remind Spencer about his argument in Movie Fights.
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying, there was no conception of summer as a movie season, which is weird. Like, when do people have more free time on their hands, especially the young folk, than when school's out? Like,
back in the day, they were all in a station wagon on their way to the Grand Canyon, I think.
Right.
You were in that station wagon.
That's Vacation, right. Joe. That's the film.
They're playing an endless game of stickball in either the streets of Brooklyn or in the Sandlot.
And just a lot of open hydrants, man. Just open hydrants as far as the eyes can see.
Week after week of hydrant. It was endless. What can't you do in a hydrant?
I played in hydrants, you guys, in New York.
I always thought that was a myth.
Are you a
New York thing?
This is newsy confirmed.
From New York to Santa Fe, just hydrants. That's amazing. I really thought that was a myth. I did not think that.
No, it's real.
Yeah, is that a real thing?
Yeah, it really is. It's a real thing. I mean, I didn't do it a lot, but we also had a real fountain that we would play in. Anyway, enough about like all of that is just like totally out of the question for kids now. You can't be in a body of water together. Danielle.
But it's New York water. It makes
the best water in the world.
Makes the bagels so delicious.
the greatest water in the world.
That's why the bagels are good. It's why the bagels are good.
That's why the
And
bagels are good. That is true.
Danielle, do you regret the begetting of the blockbuster?
I think it was a inevitable begetting. Hey, thank you for the kitty cosign.
Do we have a soundboard, or was that real?
That was real.
That was real. But yeah, no, I think it was going to happen at some point. Everything is, if there is a way to find a way to make things make more money, someone is going to find a way to make those things make more money. Someone literally sat down about baseball one day and was like, how do we do the most baseball with the least money? And then they did it. And then they used that knowledge to do that to baseball, and then use that baseball to sell books, and then did that to also become a movie. Like, there will always be a way to make more money on things down the line. So regret it? I don't know. It's just always been the way it's been in my lifetime. I can't really imagine a time where it would be like, what picture is coming here? Well, I guess 2 miles away, they just got that Jaws. I guess that Jaws is coming here next. I can't really, it's hard for me to imagine not being able to, everyone, stream the same TV show at the time. So the thought that you would have to wait for a movie to go like town to town to town, Carney style, before it finally gets to you is just not something I can really imagine,
Yeah, I don't think movies have been bad until recently. Like, as a whole. Just if you take the business as a whole, like, movies were great and have been great through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and pretty much stopped there. I don't know. Like, maybe the early 2000s, it kind of petered out. So it doesn't track for me to blame Jaws for today's movie business, because you had things coexisting. In the 80s, you had tons of amazing blockbusters that didn't become these like endlessly repeated franchises. They were original at the time. And you also had like independent film in the 90s coexisting among like giant Roland Emmerich movies. It seems like only now, when there's so few movies made and it's so risk averse, and these studios are owned by, the Bain Capital or whatever, that they are just making the same 4 things over and over again. They're just so micromanaged and kind of repetitive.
I'm gonna argue with your police work there a little bit, Spencer. A couple things. One, not all movies are good. Like, hundreds, and that's just never been true. Like, hundreds of Westerns were made that were incredibly formulaic and incredibly repetitive, and it was the same movie over and over again, the same really problematic movie over and over again, and only a handful were truly great, and those are the ones that we remember. And by the way, I think Jaws 2 and 3 beg to differ with your argument about it was up till 2000 that movies were good. And finally, plenty of independent and foreign films that are absolutely stunning get released every single year. They just don't get the marketing attention that these huge blockbusters do. And not every blockbuster is bad. There's a number of them that are not that good or that are very formulaic and repetitive, but they're certainly not everyone is bad. Counter argument?
Yeah, I was speaking more generally to the overall health of the movie industry, I guess, and like the broad contours of it, which is there are fewer movies being made today, much fewer. And those movies are based on franchises or IP. Doesn't mean they're all bad, but it means that is largely what you're getting.
That's interesting, because Jaws was based on an IP, and it took us this big arc to get to now everything is almost exclusively IP. Like, history didn't start for me until 1981.
Nope, nothing before that.
But I am curious, I would wonder, was there an IP like rush after Jaws?
That's a really good question, because it's to Joe's point, it was based on a previous book. I mean, the other thing too that's different today than the eras that you're talking about is that like television has increased so much. So when there were hundreds of films being made, and some of these films, some classic films were made in a really short period of time. I think Casablanca was shot in just a couple of weeks, like on a soundstage, but with that in mind, now we have far more television and far more series and limited series and all of this great storytelling being done just in a different way. So I just think storytelling is still wonderful. It's just kind of evolved in a different way than it was then. IP wise, I don't know, Ryan. I don't know if you're able to Google that business.
That might be another day. Might be another show day. Like, what was the first IP?
I feel like I brought down the house by debating Spencer.
No,
it's great.
Fight me back.
I'm an energy vampire. Colin Robinson of SJU.
He's Colin Robinson. Something that's interesting to me is that looking back, especially if we're comparing and contrasting these two a little bit, Jaws doesn't feel like the natural birth of the blockbuster. Like, it's a really great genre and character study piece, whereas Star Wars is like the Star Destroyer goes overhead, boom, like that's like the look and feel of a modern blockbuster, whereas you look back now and Jaws feels like very small almost in a way. So it's just interesting to me that that's the one that like birthed the modern blockbuster, was this movie that in retrospect almost feels in a way like a couple characters stuck in an elevator, like bottle piece.
Yeah. Jaws. I think Jaws is also one of those films like in film school that. Oh, sorry. There's just a really weird noise outside my door. So this might turn into like a live, murder. Or like what are those found footage? What are those movies called? Screenlight. Screenlight horror movies where like a demon comes out of my screen. Anyway, before that happens, we'll just note that Jaws is one of those movies like in film school. I know you guys probably had this too, where they break it down like this is the movie that shows you the conflicts in film. It can be man versus man, man versus self, or man versus nature, and it's all three. Look at that shark. Shit.
I like that your professor was Quint.
Yeah.
Y'all know me. Y'all know my films.
Three students went into that seminar. Came out.
Quint was right.
Hashtag Quint was right.
Hashtag Quint was right. Spencer, do you want to know what I think you should pick the best and the worst of the Jaws franchise to date, and then I'm going to tell you what your argument was about Jaws: The Revenge.
Oh, I mean, I've only seen Jaws. So that's the best and the worst of the Jaws franchise.
Wait, you didn't see Jaws: The Revenge? You made this argument about it?
You think I'm gonna watch a movie just to argue in movie fights against some stupid thing? No. I'm not gonna sit through Jaws: The Revenge just so I can make a point about it on movie fights. Well, it's bad. I don't need to see it. I'll just call it bad in various ways until somebody rings a bell.
So it's actually amazing. It's Jaws: The Revenge. This time it's personal, in which the shark, or some grandchild of the shark, the original shark, it's unclear, follows what's her name? It's his wife, Roy Scheider's wife, to the Bahamas, where she meets Michael Caine, and it's trying to kill her whole family because they killed its family.
Roth, this movie sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And you made this argument that it was a great film because it's a metaphor for grief. Because
I Babaduked it.
You guys are gonna make me roll down my slanted hallway.
Movie Fights is a show for kids that never did the reading in school. That's.
Oh, no wonder I won one.
Talk about marketing.
I've seen 90% of the films I argue about on Movie Fights, but the other 10%, go back and see if you can find out what they are. The speed round especially, it's like, I've never seen Romancing the Stone, but here we go. That stone sure was romanced.
You should see Romancing the Stone. It's really good.
I'm sure. It is a Kurt Russell movie.
No, it's Michael Douglas.
Whatever,
Danielle,
they look the same on the box art.
Yeah, it's really good. It's like you have a romance writer, and they have like that heated chemistry, and she's making the Kathleen Turner voice all over the place. Yeah, it's really funny, and they have great chemistry, and it's like super hot. And when I was a kid, I was like, I don't think I should be allowed to watch this because it's too sexy, but I did. Yeah, both of them, they're really good. Romancing the Stone and the other one. Yeah, they're totally worth it. The going gets tough, and then the tough get going and stuff. It's great.
It also spawned sequels, which were not very good.
Jewel of the Nile was fine.
I don't think I've ever realized that Jewel of the Nile was the sequel to Romancing the Stone until just now.
Yeah, it is. And then later, Danny DeVito got the whole gang back together and did a movie that I love that not everybody does, called The War of the Roses.
Which is amazing, and also everyone should see it. It's really funny. It makes divorce really funny, and then it ends real weird and tragic.
Yeah, like divorce.
Like divorce.
Joe Starr, tell us about marketing.
You see, Roth. The thing I think is cool about because obviously Jaws changed marketing. They spent like somewhere around 2-3 million to market Jaws. There was a really long campaign ahead of time for this movie, which was one of the first times they ever. Every time it's my turn to talk is when. What are you doing?
It's a weird one today, you guys. I think we should just name it. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Let's call it.
It's a weird one. Like there's a thing outside my door.
Put that in parentheses after the title.
Yes.
It's a weird one.
Jaws begat the weird one. It had a great, it had just a really strong campaign leading up to it. I think the tagline was something like, "It's like the devil was given Jaws," or something like that. They really leaned into the fact that it was based on a hit book. So it was like, the campaign was, interestingly enough, really spoiler heavy. Like, whereas now we're like, don't tell me the thing. Like, don't bingo my Harry Potter movie or whatever. Back then they were like, nope, you're going to get everything you love from the book. This inciting incident, this surprise twist, this guy's death.
Sharks.
Really, really sharks. And I just think it's interesting that, like, again, just such a big marketing machine around what today would just be like a little like fun genre thing is really interesting to me. But yeah, I think since then, Roth, like you said, like marketing departments, I think called their shot there and have been consolidating power ever since.
Oh yeah, it's like you guys have seen The Player, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, or like any number, Swimming with Sharks, any number of movies that are about how ruthless Hollywood is. There's never really been one about like just a marketing department, you know, which I actually think would be amazing because they are so political.
Mad Men.
Like a studio marketing department. Like like a guy climbing the ropes who gets put in charge of marketing like Jet Li's The One or something like that. He's like, this is my shot.
As long as it ends with them all getting hit by an asteroid. You know, to get the audience back on.
That's how Sim 1 should have ended. Was just they hit everyone with an asteroid as the fake computer lady sings.
Do you really believe that the whole, Spencer, real question, do you really believe that the whole state of the industry is like in irreparable disrepute? Like, is art over? Is it the death of art is dead? Let's declare it.
What? No, everything's cyclical. It's all gonna, just like there were 100 Western movies made, like people are something's gonna happen where we stop seeing the types of movies that are being made today, and they'll figure something else out. I think that the
horny ski movie.
Like what?
Back to the horny.
Like the horny ski movie will dominate the box office once again.
Yeah, every film in the 80s was amazing, Spencer. Hamburger University is a fucking God.
It's okay. It's today, man. We're just going.
I think
my fault. It's today's fault.
It's perfect. The ground is set because climate change is going to make skiing ever a more rare commodity. It's going to be harder and harder to hit the slopes. The prime ski window is going to get shorter and shorter. And with COVID, we're all separated from each other. We're all in these boxes. We can't be horny. So we're going to need movies that let us escape and bring us what we can't have. And that is, we're going to Aspen, baby. Aspen.
Film festivals. One of the things that is a bummer in the last 15 years to me is that all the film festivals that really were these bastions for independent filmmakers to get their starts, they were really co-opted by the studios, and there became very little difference.
They all got Woodstock 99 pretty hard.
Yeah. And even now, like a Burning Man, it's like, why is Beyonce there? So one interesting thing that is happening, this is just a weird aside, is I think now with particularly the moment that we're in, because I do think that this could be sometimes things that happen outside of everything is a catalyst. And now that people are not going to be going to the theaters as much. And so many of these big blockbusters, I mean, obviously there's toys and there's other things. They don't want to bring them to streaming because it's not the same as the money that they're going to make in theaters. And I wonder if that's going to be an impetus to start being like, maybe we don't need 7 superhero movies that we spent $1 billion on. Like maybe we should start scaling down and doing smaller stuff. Could be interesting.
Hey, Ryan, check out that chat and let us know what other people are saying about Jaws, which one is the best of the Jawses, what they are looking forward to. And then this next question, which is, do you guys think that this was the biggest and only sea change that we've seen in the entertainment industry in the last almost like 50 years now? Which the answer to this is going to be no, obviously. But if not, what's the next biggest one? I mean, the thing that pops to mind is the idea of the cinematic universe has been a massive change.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right. My thought behind the question was like, I think Jaws figures out like the marketing and the event. And then Lucas with 77 really figured out like, hey, we're not just selling a movie. And I think those two together are like just this weird Voltron of like what the modern blockbuster is. Like, Jaws figured out how to sell, and then Lucas was like, oh, wait, but that's not actually what we're selling. He like figured out what the McDonald's fries for movies actually was, which was everything around it. But yeah, the cinematic universe is really interesting as like the next sort of evolution in that, where it's like, we're not just selling you a movie or an idea, or like we're selling you a whole world. We're selling you a series of television on the big screen and making it feel like a huge annual event.
And it's also kind of a cheat, right? Because you go into it knowing exactly what you're going to get. I mean, obviously, they still spend all this money on marketing and all of these other things, but you can actually wind up pointing people to different stuff because it's like, if you are going into a Marvel movie now, you have a really good idea of what that's going to be. And so it means that they don't have to spend as much time trying to convince you that you want to enter a brand new universe with brand new characters, and you might be more interested in to make you more interested in seeing it. They can do more selling of the other stuff around it because they know that like that work has already been done. That work was done 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it does change that kind of marketing.
And so, Joe, you're talking about with Star Wars in terms of like all the merchandising and everything around it. Yeah.
They sort of figure out what goes around it, which is even that's already sort of evolved away from toys and more into video games and like the spin-offs of the big screen movies and stuff like that. Yeah, I think the big they've eventized their events with cinematic universes almost like they figured out how to successfully put a hat on a hat. I think you're right.
Ryan, check in with the chat and see what they're saying about the idea of have there been other big changes in the way movies work in the last 40 some odd years. What they think of Jaws, and see if they can guess one of the movies that Spencer had not seen on Movie Night. Still hard to do that.
I think one of the other ways it's evolved. Now you got me thinking. Just to hop on to Roth, the conversation you and Spencer were having earlier about sort of how things are changing now is the next big change that things are getting smaller because you sort of talk about more things are on TV and streaming. Is the evolution of the blockbuster like a more comfortable at home, not a blockbuster event?
Interesting. Yeah. So, well, we've talked about this a lot, like the idea that the movie theater experience itself would be more and more rarefied and located largely to the big box, like the event film, and then everything else you pretty much watch at home, which is a bummer in some cases, like Annihilation, where it is really visually driven, or any given Nolan movie. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think also did something interesting that hasn't been repeated a lot, which he was able to create like a art house film that was made for a lot of money that then made a lot of money with Inception. But it just hasn't been, I haven't seen that really repeated a ton. I mean, Denis Villeneuve tried with Blade Runner, but it didn't really work out. Or can you guys think of any other time that really worked out?
What worked out?
Like an art housey blockbuster?
I guess Get Out wound up being bigger than a lot of people thought it was going to be. I'm trying to think of other.
Get Out feels like Jaws in a way where it's
like. Oh my God, the Blumhouse.
Yeah.
The Michael
that would be it. Yeah.
Yeah. that model has been a pretty big change.
Yeah, I think that like the biggest change has been streaming, and the rise of streaming and the fall of selling physical media. Like people, I know, like, you know, probably people who are watching this have a big stack of Blu-rays, but like that used to be the way. Like everyone in the world had their movies on disc. And when you can't sell that anymore, or people just aren't interested in buying that anymore, it completely changed the way studios make and market their movies, because they can't rely on a smaller film, like especially comedy. Like this is what I think killed the theatrical comedy, is like you would buy an Anchorman DVD because you'd want to watch it again. And that would be why they would make more comedies, is because you'd buy all the American Pies, you know, direct to video. And that just, the economics just don't make sense anymore when you're just subscribing to a streaming service instead of paying the studio every single time for an individual movie after it's come out in theaters.
Yeah, that also changed independent films. It was a big thing because they were able to make, you know, theatrical releases for certain independent films and for documentaries were often almost advertisements for DVD sales. And then that has totally changed and they need a new model. Hey, I made us a segue with Blumhouse because Jason Blum is going to be on a Hey Fandom right after this at noon, where you can go and ask your own questions. It's a live video AMA with the person that made this change happen. So join him and Eric Goldman right after this. There is a link in the description below for where you can go ask your questions. And then also, Joe is going to tell you all the other things right now.
Hey, yeah, definitely go do that. Definitely get your questions in. A lot of time when we ask you guys for fan questions, everyone's always got questions about like how the industry works and the ins and outs. Like this is the dude to go ask those questions to. So make sure you please go watch Hey Fandom with Jason Blum today. That's going to be so cool. This is all in support of Direct Relief, an organization working to provide emergency medical equipment to frontline responders to COVID-19 globally. We also have links in the description to them. Please make sure you check that out, share and support. All of that's still going on. Wear your mask, avoid those droplets. Hit like, hit subscribe. We've got we did a watch this for the Joker this week, and there's some really cool titles that dropped in there that aren't the usual, like, oh, he did XYZ on Scorsese. Like there's some really cool deep dives in there that really kind of took me by surprise that I wasn't expecting. So make sure you check that out. And then finally tomorrow, Spencer and I are going to go back to Pandora together.
Yeah.
And, it's gonna be a treat. So make sure you hang out with us for that tomorrow. And then, of course, as we have all week this week, we've also got links to learn about and also get involved with the Black Lives Matter movement. Please check that stuff out. Please get involved. Call your reps.
Yay! Thank you, Joe. We see you, Joe.
I was trying to see if my ponytail was long enough so we could touch tails. That might be too steamy. Might be too steamy for
we'll
YouTube.
get demonetized for sure.
Yeah, no touching tails on YouTube.
Spencer Gilbert.
Yes.
Yesterday, we had a very important discussion about blow-up dolls. And I would love for you to update myself, because I haven't read this yet. I don't know the news.
Neither have I.
And all the wonderful people with us today. First, Ryan, chime in with the chat. What are they saying?
Oh, chat's saying all sorts of stuff. Let me scroll through. Let's see a couple of general thoughts they had on Jaws and Star Wars. At Ralinal said Jaws created the business model for blockbusters, but Star Wars created how blockbusters look and feel, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
Langley Neely says, hey, Langley says Jaws was the first blockbuster, but isn't actually the monotype for what blockbusters would become. So I think they're kind of saying the same thing there, where like it created the industry part of it, but maybe not necessarily what we think of as a blockbuster. At K. Walton points out that Jaws and Star Wars were also blockbuster, quote unquote, films that were nominated for Best Picture, which you don't really see as much often. Yeah. So for some of the other changes that people were saying, at John Bainbridge says that CGI was a major change. Stephen H. agrees with Spencer, says that streaming is the biggest change. And then for movies that they think maybe count as like art house that then blew up more than that, I saw some votes for Parasite, I saw some votes for Get Out, and I saw a couple Joker heads. And then at Ghost just said in all caps, Snyder Cut. So I think that's just where.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
God! We haven't talked about the Fandom yet. The DC Fandom.
We'll be talking about the Fandom.
We're gonna get into the Fandom.
Come on, guys.
Get in the Fandom.
The effects stuff is interesting too because again,
Graphic.
all of that from '77, like Lucasfilm did so much off screen that changed movies. Not just figuring out how to sell toys, but figuring out how to do all sorts of crazy effects, and just the amount of different companies that spun off of that movie is insane.
Yeah, Joe, to your point, because the ILM came, basically they had a need for it, so they created the company out of Star Wars. I think THX was created around that time, but definitely ILM. But then also bringing it back to Spielberg, if you think about another big change, it was Jurassic Park. And the way that they combined CGI and practical effects in that movie, suddenly it was going to be stop motion initially. And so that would have been a very, very different look than what it ultimately was.
Have you ever seen the Raptor animatics? They're horrible. The animatics, oh, they look bad. They definitely look like an elf that doesn't want to be, that wants to be a dentist is about to like join them in their chase. They look rough.
Also, Lord of the Rings. And then to the point of tomorrow with Gollum and the work that was done on Gollum, and then for you guys tomorrow, maybe with the performance capture Avatar. All right, Spencer, blow up dolls.
Look, all I know is that production got halted. I don't know the deets. Let me scroll up here.
Cold Read, blow up deets.
Yeah, the production on CBS soap Bold and the Beautiful, as we were talking about yesterday in our CG and sex scene substitutes. I can't believe it's not a real sex scene episode. They were going to use some blow up dolls, and production has been paused after just one day back on set. They had a good 24 hours. They need to better accommodate the large volume of testing needed. The quote from the show's producer. We have paused very briefly to modify our testing protocol to better accommodate the large volume of testing needed. Safety remains our top priority as we continue to move forward with the production of The Bold and the Beautiful. B&B filmed with cast and crew today, and it was a successful first day back at work. The glistening producer said. the flop sweaty producer who stank like sex. It was a successful first day back at work. Read the statement.
I don't think that's in there.
There was a heaving bosom somewhere. So I missed yesterday, which because I have so many thoughts. In fact, before we came on, when we had realized that was happening, Spencer came on to our briefing right as the first sentence that left my mouth was, I guess sales of real dolls are going to go up. And Spencer was like, huh? And I was like, I swear this is a work conversation. How long does it take to clean plastic? I guess is my thing. And I know they're saying masks are more important now, but how long do you think it takes to like Windex off a blow up?
Oh God.
I'm just offering a suggestion to the Bold and the Beautiful about how they can safely resume production.
Oh, absolutely.
Also,
Yeah, turn it into an Eyes Wide Shut nightmare sex cult.
Yes.
I'm trying to
Roth, please do your best improvised I've always loved you dialogue with that mask on.
Oh God.
I've always loved you.
Oh God. Oh God. The Phantom of the Rothera. I can't handle it.
Yeah, this is a Screen Life horror movie.
Amazing.
Oh God.
Go.
Well,
the future of film and TV, you guys.
James Cameron just let you into the trench out of pure fear.
Yeah.
I'm trying to scare the demon that continues to make some kind of knock on my door.
It's probably a cat.
Yeah.
Demon.
But I guess to answer the question of how much cleaning do you have to do, you got to be careful because like too much water, you can't just straight up use like a power cleaner. You're going to start popping all those balloons.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with the water pressure.
Is it like a soak? Do you put them in for like a dip and then gently wipe them off? Because you do have to be careful with like the scrubbing. You got to get into all the, I think you have to put them in for like a cleansing bath. It's got to be someone's job to bathe the blow up doll.
Where's coming from?
You could,
just
Danielle's had some jobs.
We don't kink shame here, Roth. We don't kink shame here.
I'm not
Yeah,
shaming.
sulfuric acid, some boiling zinc, something like that. But then I think it's mostly just a PA and a pipe cleaner.
Well, you have to be careful with the
like a
pipe
chimney
cleaner
sweep.
'cause it's sharp. You know?
Oi, governor!
I think I should end the show. Because Brian has to go produce the Jason Blum thing. I'm a little worried that I broke Spencer, quite frankly.
Oh, no, I'm stronger than ever.
And then there's a demon in the form of a cat, which is the best possible form to trick me at the door. So I'm going to prepare.
Oh, not the mask again.
I'm going to prepare to call him no. Call the four corners, guys.
Okay.
When
Bye.
Power of